This is about your marriage. You two will have sex together every night for the next 30 nights straight.
If I choose you, yeah.
No exceptions!
This is the Film Board, everybody. Over here at the next reel, and I'm Pete Wright, and I am joined by the lovely and talented Steve Sarmento.
Good evening.
Once a future king. Hi, Steve.
Hello.
And Andy Nelson. He's right over there.
Hey.
Hi, Andy. And our principal performer tonight is Tom Metz, Tommy Handsome. Hello, Tommy.
I'm here too.
You're here too.
Hi, guys.
We're very
Hooray.
excited to be sitting here talking about it. We've been talking about this for a long time, and then there was a period where we couldn't talk about it that was very much a secret, and now we can talk about it again. It's finally here. Your feature film, Tom. 30.
My feature film debut.
Yes, it is 30 Nights
Ooh.
of Sex to Save Your Marriage. We have to use the whole thing?
We do. Well, no, from now on, we can call it 30 Nights. The original title was 30 Nights. And then our sales agents, Shoreline Entertainment, who we got picked up from, said, hey, do you want like a shot? put the word sex in it, especially apparently for international audiences. They're like, put the word sex in it and it'll change your life. Their idea was just 30 Nights of Sex. And I was like, well, I do have a family. So we bargained with them and we all decided on 30 Nights of Sex to Save Your Marriage, which is a little long, but it works. But we can happily call it 30 Nights. That's sort of its native name.
Well,
It's like its nickname.
It's his
Nickname, that's better.
Now that we've said it, it's Ibid. 30 Nights Ibid. We can refer to it for the rest of the night. The film, I want to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about what the film is about. We are talking about this on presumably the eve, hopefully, that it actually drops in Amazon, on Amazon Prime, and in Amazon itself. And so let's talk a little bit about what the film is about, and then we'll get into some Q&A for you.
Sure. 30 Nights of Sex to Save Your Marriage follows a married couple, Nick and Willa. They both have a son. They've been married for a long time. And as can happen to adults in their middle age, the spark, let's say, has sort of gone out of their marriage. And so after asking for help from their friends, they undergo a 30-night sort of experimental challenge with a renowned yet very eccentric relationship therapist played by Dan Fogler. And he sort of tasks them with the task of having to have marital intercourse every night for 30 nights straight. No exceptions, as he screams at you. And there's different assignments for every night. It starts off very vanilla. It gets very kind of out of control at times. And you just sort of go on this journey with the couple trying to save their marriage, trying to save their family. And we wish them a lot of luck.
I have to now. We're all you're talking to three middle-aged guys with great marriages,
right? No
so
worries.
what I'm about to say comes with the caveat that everything's great here.
You're saying why not make it 60? I get it. We're all very virile. I get it.
I don't want to speak for Steve or Andy, but I do want to say I thought going into this movie that it was going to be more slapstick than it was. A title like that. It's not as slapstick. It's not as like just joke after joke after joke as I expected it to be. And the major arc of their relationship, I'm just going to say I related to it. It's been married a long time,
great.
And so I found it.
Sure.
I did not expect. Okay, so two questions. I'm not sure because I know how funny you are as a funny guy, but I also know the kind of movies that you're principally into. And it surprises me that that this is your debut feature film. Can you talk a little bit about your experience going in there? Why isn't there more murder in this? And
there's not a single Jacob's Ladder.
No,
in the entire thing. We're never in Brazil. It actually comes from this. Started as a short film. Both the co-leads, the amazing Mandy Kaplan and Johnny Giacalone. Both were filming an independent feature, kind of like ours. That one never actually ended up coming out. So kismet for us. Mm-hmm. But Mandy, during that, pitched an idea for a short for him, it was actually based on something that one of her friends had gone through, that the spark had gone out of their marriage, and they did a very different than ours, but a 30-night sex program. They're now divorced, but she's very happily new married. But Mandy was like, this seems fertile. And they pitched me. They were like, we want to write this as a short. And they pitched it to me so I could be the director. We made that years ago, and it ended up having a very good festival run. Mandy won Best Actress. We won 2 different Audience Favorites Awards. But one of the things that I remember saying when they first pitched it to me, it was called, was it a deli? Doesn't matter what it's called. But I said, this is a feature. There's room to spread in this for a feature just to keep in our mind. Now we all went, ha ha ha, because we weren't anywhere close to making a feature back then. But what I realized that I needed to do in order to give myself, if I can be completely honest, the courage for my first directorial feature is I needed a team that I really cared about and I really trusted in. And the fact that we all wrote the feature together, that Johnny and Mandy and I are so different in so many different ways, but really complement each other in a way that I think is amazing. And then when we brought on our line producer, who was so incredible, she was immediately promoted to producer. That's Liz Vukovic. She's the reason that it doesn't look like I made the entire film in my apartment. Like she's like a grown-up movie person. We were like, how do you do this? And she sort of made the world come alive. She's amazing. So it wouldn't have been, you're not the first person to ask that question, Pete, of like, oh, like a romantic comedy, if you want to call this a romantic comedy, that's my least favorite genre.
Yeah.
But I loved the challenge of it. I loved the idea of the short was really just 30 little skits. The idea of having to have this arc with both the look of it, the coloring, the lighting, and then also, of course, the story elements and the character arcs. I felt like it was doable. And a lot of it would take place sort of in one house. So that helps with a lot of the budget concerns. And really, it was sort of, we knew it was almost like cheating because we'd made part of it before. We knew some things that really worked. And so that gave me the confidence to then know if we're all in this together, I think I can maybe do it.
As a follow-up question to that, a lot of, I went to film school, and one of the things that your professors will teach you, and a lot of people say is write what you know. And so I think, I don't know, I'm just
weird, right?
Very curious. Like this was the one that
I know, because I'm not married. I have a dog. That's it. I have a dog. I always say that as if that's a explanation for why I'm not married.
It explains a lot, but it might not explain that.
Right. The basic idea is that I am very invested in all of my friends' marriages and with their kids. And so I have a ton of input from them. And then Johnny, who was married previously, Mandy, who is still married, they had very different outlooks onto things. I won't say who is who. One of them, the idea would come up of the idea of having 30 nights straight. And they were like, bring it. And the other one was like, ugh. I'm not going to say whose was who. But it was, I think it helped in the way that the three of us wrote the script. It was a very democratic process in that each of us, 2 votes against 1. If 2 people thought this is what works, then we'll do it, even if someone disagreed. I think weirdly not having been married or having kids or having had sexual intercourse for 30 nights straight, as far as you know, helped me be a little bit of an arbiter, of a little bit of like an everyman in that, of I can see it from without having it bringing my own sort of biases or feelings about marriage, kids, sex, all of that to it. It's weird. It's the opposite of write what you know, but I think I was able to help sort of mitigate a lot of those experiences because of that.
Just shifting gears a little bit, what was the production process like for this? You co-wrote it with 2 other people.
Uh-huh.
And then what was how long of a shoot did you have? How complicated was it? Were you stressed out the entire time? Was it an easy peasy production like every production is?
Sure. Right. It was, I remember napping through most of it. I woke up and I was like, we're almost done. No, it is a invigorating, it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And also the most rewarding. It was so much in the beginning, like during pre-production, all I was doing was kind of hiding panic that I was feeling of like, I'm kind of in charge of this. Like at the end of the day, everyone's going to be looking at me. And I felt like such imposter syndrome. I felt like I was just faking it and they're all going to know. And I kept having versions of like dreams at night in the pre-production of just being in this like boardroom and everyone that I knew all being like, well, we're ready for the next shot, but we have no information. What are we going to do? And staring at me. None of that is exactly real. What I was able to do, to answer clinically your question is, yeah, we had about a month and a half of pre-production, which was great. Liz Vukovic, again, really, she had worked with our DP on a different project. She'd worked with the first AD, and she brought a lot of the team together for us, giving us options. Of course, you know, we would meet with 3 or 4 different people for every position, but she really helped create the world for us. And we bought her an office or rented her an office in a garage somewhere. That's where Foster lived for a while I was out doing location scouts and all of that. The production itself, we shot for only 14 days out of 16 days. So it's a 14-day shoot over 16 days. We did have 2 days off, or 1 day off and 1 day off kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And then it was just general, Hollywood stuff. I mean, we were really taking it seriously. Everyone was working. We were SAG ultra low budget. So we're very, very low in SAG. And after is giving us sort of some okays for that. But I mean, 12 hours, we were out 100%. So there were times at some days where I was just yelling at actors, making it hopefully fun, but like, we're not walking back to one. Like, go. I'm looking because I really wanted to take it seriously because I knew that the crew was so amazing that they would be okay with it. But like, I don't want to ever take advantage of them. Everyone was working for less than they were worth. Everyone was so phenomenal. And it was a rough schedule. I mean, the biggest problem is time. It's always time.
Yeah, you don't want to have that conversation where, you know, the crew picks their kind of point person and they have the little sit down chat with you about how things are going to go now.
Disaster. I mean, that was something that I really prided myself on. And I guess I am the director. I assume that they were telling me the truth, but I got a ton of, we as the producers, Mandy, Liz, Johnny, and I got a ton of compliments for running such a happy set. I'm not a screamer and I've never understood that idea, unless you're in horrible trouble or James Cameron. And we got such great feedback from such legendary actors like Jenny O'Hara, Alan, Katie Wilder. I mean, there's so many people that have been acting for so long. Dan Fogler, of course, that one of the biggest compliments we got as a whole, Johnny, Mandy, Liz, and I as producers and me as director was, it was such a professional set and such a happy set. And they said that the two things that a lot of the crew came up to me at different points and said that the two things that they were worried about because they'd worked with first time directors before and that I didn't show was, panic or ego.
Okay.
And those are the two things that I tried not to really have. Ego and panic, that's the sign of every director who doesn't feel like they know what they're doing, which I was always worried that I was. You want to project a certain amount of confidence, but also be inclusive and nice and try to make it sort of a nice atmosphere and stuff. And I was really happy with all of that.
And that's a tricky balance because they also expect you to be the decision maker. And so you have to, you know, find that place to ride that line. You don't want to all of a sudden be like, oh, well, what do you think? And so it's tricky. So
it is tricky. And there were times I never read anyone the riot act. There were times where some departments or something let me down a bit and they definitely knew that, but not in a public way. And instead I used that way of just sort of being like, I'm displeased and therefore you are required to work with me to find a solution. And then we would, and then we'd all be friends. That seems like the nice, instead of saying, figure this out while I go and have a latte, because I do not drink latte. I'm keyed up enough.
So Tommy, if you could go back to your pre-production self and give yourself two pieces of advice, like one thing to not worry about and one thing to make sure you focus on, what would those two things be? It's sort of like, what did you learn that you would take with yourself?
Man, great question. The advice I would give myself is, always remember that you have this amazing team around you and you're not just alone. No one is staring at you, waiting for you to come up with everything. It's such a collaborative. I like to, as a director, I'm a very collaborative director as far as like in the short films I've made and stuff, while also still being the final decision maker. But I like that. I like being in a situation where with actors, you can have them pitch some lines or something. You know, we can change things around. Or with of course, with our amazing, Carol McClintock was our amazing director of photography. And she would not change, but she would suggest new camera things on the day once she was there in the moment. And just to be able to know, I guess the best thing I could say is to know that it's all going to work out. To just sort of believe that it's all going to work out and to use that sort of reserve of strength. I feel like I have that now that I went through my first film and there were so many hurdles and so many roadblocks. We lost a location the day before we were supposed to, in the middle of the shoot, the day we were supposed to film this really big sequence. They were like, no, we couldn't get the clearances.
What was, just now that we've seen it, what was the sequence? What'd you lose?
The sequence where it was Alan and their son, played by the amazing Duncan Joyner, are playing with Nick. It's Nick's father and Alan's grandson playing.
They end up playing in like skee ball or
playing
something.
Foosball
in the front, not foosball.
Foosball. Wiffle ball in the front yard.
Wiffle ball. You said foosball.
Because Tommy's next film is going to be a sports biopic.
Look,
we know that.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I don't know about, it's clearly sport. So I thought they were playing cribbage. I apparently don't know anything is.
So they end up, what we get in the film, they're in the front yard of the parents' house.
The entire scene was written. They're both fake fishing in a pool with their legs in the water. And they have we ended up cutting the song out of the movie, but there was a song that they were singing that becomes a body. And Nick's like, hey, and the father's like, what? It's fine. And he's like, what? But you used to be so strict with me. That kind of dynamic. But the night before, we were filming late at night at I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but the sex dungeon. When
Fantastic.
they go to, when they go, and that is an actual, what would you call that? I shouldn't call it a dungeon, an S&M,
a BDSM
room.
Club, right?
A BDSM culture room.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
that we filmed
was Kelly Hancock plays the dominatrix.
Correct. She is an actor. She's an amazing actress, and she came in and blew it out of the park. And I still hope that she enjoyed the experience. She was amazing, but I could always sort of wonder of like, I don't know, like. This is cool, right? I don't know. She was so great. And she has like just a couple lines, but she's so striking in it. I just always wanted her to really like me and really like the experience. I think but either way, we were there at like 10 p.m. Filming the next morning early because we had a tight turnaround. And that's when we learned that we lost the location. So then we moved it to a completely different location that we had actually scouted for the Hero House. And then Johnny and I, just because Mandy was busy getting in that outfit, I won't tell you what that outfit was, but she was having trouble breathing because that thing was skin tight. Johnny and I were writing the new version of the scene.
Okay.
Ooh, wow.
Of all of that had to change because the entire dynamic, it was all based around water and pool and stuff. That's just one of those things that happens.
That scene, I want to talk about the BDSM club some more. I like a lot more. It's going to get hot.
Sure.
No. It's one of those.
Could we get the address?
I can actually tell you that is just in. I'm not, of course, not going to tell you where it is, but that is just in a neighborhood. Someone that owns that has just created that atmosphere in her house. And hasn't really told her neighbors.
Wow.
And it's just like this thing. And then she picks up clients from 2 blocks away, blindfolds them, brings them there. And when you walk into the house, it's just a house. And then when you go into the garage, it is not just a garage.
Wow.
He was great. We found her on, I think, like Craigslist or something. She was amazing. Of course, I'm not going to tell you any of her name or anything, but if she ever listens to this, she was incredible and just,
Well, it's one of those sequences where we get a little bit of some comedy cutting, right? Because he's getting this tour, and then the dominatrix character says, "And this
so much
is that,"
to see.
and then we get that quick comedy whip cut to
Willa.
I'm like Capella.
Right.
Willa.
Capella. Yeah. Willa.
So we get to
Capella,
Willa,
yeah.
and she's already dressed in the outfit. And
comedically too quick.
Yeah,
it's not
it's
supposed
way
to
too
be
quick.
realistic.
And it's not obviously it's not meant to be realistic. It's meant to be that comic cut, and it's absolutely worth a chuckle. I want to talk a little bit about the balance, like maintaining the balance between like the sex and the comedy and the heart, because you've got all three going on in this thing, and it's I found myself, I think I'm too close to you, and I know Johnny and Mandy, from afar. I'm way too close because I've seen the film twice now, and all I can think about is how did they do that? Like, who's the randiest one of the three of them? Who came up with the sexy jokes, and how did they keep a leash on that person? And I mean, maybe really a leash. I don't know. What do you do?
Right. As soon as we got into the writer's room, we'd all put on leashes. We'd all establish safe words, and then we'd get Chipotle. It was a neat compliment of all. Mandy Kaplan is a joke machine. She wants everything to be a joke, with no discredit. Johnny also is incredibly funny, but Johnny Giacalone really injects a lot of the heart. He comes from a lot of whenever the movie kind of slows down and we really have a moment, that comes from Johnny being like, guys, we can't remake the short. We can't just remake this sketch film. We really have to keep checking it. Because Johnny actually did the hero work. He broke the back of the original screenplay, which changed immensely, but he kind of went off for a couple weeks and just wrote out a really good version of what you would call a vomit draft of getting it all out there. And we were always using that as our shaping. And Mandy and I would just come in and sort of shape things and change. But I don't know, because I have a really absurdist sense of humor. Mandy is very body. Johnny is very body. We all kind of complemented each other in different good ways like that. And then one of the other big hurdles was, unlike the short, when we changed around nights, because there wasn't really a character arc. We could sort of do whatever we wanted. Changing things around for this, that was one of the challenges that I really liked about this movie. Why I was interested in directing it as my first one is it's this very intricate sort of Tetris game. We give you the promise of 30 nights. We have to give you 30 nights. And then we're trying to make this arc, but those nights changed direction. After we filmed them, once we found out how it worked and looking at it in post, getting some eventual feedback and stuff, there's some ADR that we tried to hopefully isn't too obvious. We really moved some stuff around in order to really cement the arc of the characters. And that was really exciting and really hard. I would like to think that it's different in some movies, that it's even more of a puzzle. That in post-production, you've set up this whole line and this whole look. And I'm interested to see what people think if we actually achieve that or not.
I understand what you're saying, because you've got, when you're working with a sketch where you don't have to have that character development arc. Because for me, watching this for the first time, I think it was the night with the food and the nacho chips, where there's to me, I just sensed a pivot
I loved that
in
night.
the relationship. I felt a pivot there and things. And it's where I realized, this is moving beyond gag on these nights. There's a development of this relationship. There's a transformation between this husband and wife that's going on here, that we get in the scenes with, Dr. Yang, and we get that with the conversations, but it was in those intimate moments with each other that we also see that. And to me, that's the tricky balance of how do you play those, because that's what people are coming for. They know the gags are going to be there, the sex jokes, all of that, but to weave in the relationship piece is a really tricky juggling act. And I think, I could see that happening. And I can't imagine the nightmare that was to balance that out. But I mean, to me, it worked well. It really worked well. So
if I was alone, it would have been a nightmare. The fact that that I had two collaborators, and the fact that there were three of us, eventually four of us. But then by the time that Liz became producer, I was director. So I got to make the final decisions. I got to break the fake democracy that we had. But that's a great that's a great night to bring up, because that's something that almost is completely unchanged. One of the few unchanged from the short.
Interesting.
And we got so much feedback from that in the short of this is when I really started to love the couple, or this is when I noticed that I was more invested than I thought I was. And then that's Johnny Giacalone's brilliance in having that post chip dump scene. I know, audience, you don't know what we're talking about. You haven't seen the movie, Amazon Prime. But then past that little silent moment of between the two of them, that was all him. We ended up writing it together, but he was like, we need a quiet check-in.
Yeah.
We need to settle down. And he had a great vision. He had a better vision for that, and one that I have much better on now than I did, because I'd only really directed just sort of straight comedy stuff.
Well, and I think, that's one of those things that I think you have in you anyway, because I mean, as a person who loves horror movies like you do, it's the same thing with, I think, any genre. It's really going to apply, and if you were doing a horror movie, you would be the guy saying, we have to have that quiet moment to set up the big scares, and so I think it's intuitively in you. It's just, thinking about it in the romantic comedy terms, I think was, kind of maybe what was putting you, where you didn't quite see it, but it obviously is there. And I think now you're like, of course it's there.
Yeah. Oh, it makes it would be so bad without it. So much worse without it. And it became, even while like writing it, it all sort of broke open for me. And so I'm so thankful for Mandy and Johnny for sort of like leading me through that, because the original, because I had done a lot of little like script notes and stuff on the short version, but a lot of it was just to make it even more rat-a-tat-tat.
Well, I think speaking of that of that pacing, like knowing when that turn has to come, that moment of silence, I think that, I kept just sort of reflecting on how hard it is to make the decision of when that comes, because every one of these nights is like has the opportunity to be just blatantly, stupidly funny and heartless, right? Which is what I get a sense of from the short, that it's just a series of gags. Like that's the opportunity that you have to avoid yourself of here, right? Is not just make it a series, and to know when to have it paced just well enough to actually deliver the jokes and some of the harder core jokes and sight gags, and really know when to turn that off to give us a chance to stop and feel like we've gotten to know the characters as well as they're getting to know each other again. And I think that was well done.
I hope we did it. That's great. I'm so glad that it worked for you guys. I mean, because there's a lot of lines that we're walking, not about like the comedy line, but just, it was tough. The tone. One of the things that I really, maybe to my detriment, wanted to avoid was what I call the long way down. It's that in Judd Apatow films, which is great that I'm criticizing Judd Apatow because he's him and I'm me, and you can see that my sink is broken in the back of is just for me, because if people ask us to compare this film to other ones, the closest we've kind of gotten sometimes is like maybe a Judd Apatow kind of, or an Judd Apatow train wrecky kind of a Paul Feig kind of thing. But I personally like to avoid too much of a Dark Night of the Soul. That turn in Act 2 where it's just the bottom, where it's so important. But I feel like some films now more than ever, they don't just have one person to apologize to. They have 9 people to apologize to. And it just kind of takes over the film. And then there's a speech that they break into, and then this kind of stuff. I was hoping that we could avoid that. We do have a Dark Night of the Soul part. It involves therapy and a party that goes wrong, and then a very bad therapy, stuff like that. And then a mea culpa, or is there? But I wanted to try to avoid that if we could, because just for me, when I get into those parts of movies, especially romantic comedies, that's my version of romantic comedies. Fake things jumping on fake things, jumping around on fake things. Like, I'm like, I get it. We have to go through this, but is there any way I could go bloop, bloop, bloop? Yes, I still own a TiVo, and like just speed through a little bit of that kind of thing. So hopefully that kind of worked too. Because I did really want to honor the pathos of the characters and their emotions. But that was also, I wanted to try to keep that moving.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because one of the things I wanted to ask you was which of the characters in here was CG, because it's flawless.
There's a guy that plays a jogger. He jogs by at one point. The one thing you can't see is because the joke is that I was bullied into it, a cameo as a jogger who looks in on something pervy. But I'm dressed as the most stereotypical weird jogger.
It was the headband.
But it's also the shorts. I don't know if you can see, and the socks and the shoes. Our costume department was so amazing. I was like, you're going to see me from the, like the neck up. They're like, well, here's your backstory. And here's a whole wardrobe that you wore for the week. And I was like, oh my God, they were all so amazing. Yeah. Because we were like, this was so different than anything I directed before. When we moved into Hero House, for instance, it was like an army invading a house. Yeah. The crew is 40 to 60 strong. And what I also learned is you can't just sort of like, everyone just can't hang out in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Like everyone needs to have spaces. You need to have a production office in your house, like scouting locations, which Liz Vukovic, again, I keep bringing up her name because she's such a champion, but she was just like, oh no, I know you like this room, but you have to think of the world. There's so many people. Where are you going to put makeup? Where are you going to put hair? Where are you going to put all of this? Where are you going to put all of the grip stuff? Where are you going to put, you have to, it's just, they're so different than working just guerrilla on a short. It's just fascinating. I loved it in a way that was also terrifying and really hard. But it gave me so much more respect, even more than I already had for filmmakers, especially indie filmmakers.
I feel like I interrupted Steve a long time ago, but with a stupid joke, and
no, it wasn't a stupid joke.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
It wasn't a stupid joke. I was gonna, Pete. I was there. I was gonna ask about the CG and the DAG. No.
Oh, so not only did I interrupt you, I stole your joke.
No. That was that. I was gonna ask if there was digital de-aging going on, but no. The other piece,
only on the jogger.
Weirdly, just on me throughout the entire filming, and I'm in one scene. But I was like, look, this isn't working out. This whole face I've got going on.
But because I haven't seen the short, because we start with. And we get it introduced, several times throughout, is the video footage from the wedding. So the flashbacks from the original so now, wedding. Is that part of the short, or was that an additional piece that was added for the character? Because that
was actually something that I pitched, that I got very turned on by, the idea of wanting to have the past comment on the present.
Yes.
I don't know if we did the best job that we could have. And part of that is because so many of the nights changed around. Originally, there was a little bit more one-to-one on certain things, and we had to cut an entire backstory thing that we had filmed just because it no longer fit anymore. But yeah, I loved that. I love that idea because I'm fascinated by linearity.
Sure, that's a word.
Things that are non-linear in film. I'm fascinated. Everything that I've made pretty much up until now has been non-linear. Like I'm always wanting to go back and forth and back and forth. And at some point, like my writing partners, even before Mandy and Johnny, was like, well, at some point you have to grow up, like tell a normal story and stop hiding clearly you're uncomfortable with your own writing ability. So you hide it behind so many tricks. Instead, tell a story from A to, I don't know, B. I'm like, well, then I have to be like, what? Establishing shots? Oh boy. That's why the establishing shots are so terrible in the movie. I'm bad at the nuts and bolts.
No, I think
but did you like that stuff?
Because I don't see it as a gimmick. It's, I think, a necessity in the story. If we're going to start with a couple whose marriage is on the rocks and they're going to commit to this challenge, we've got to be rooting for them, and we've got to get that early,
to see where they once were.
That really set the stage for. I need to, in a typical rom-com, you've got the whole meet cute and that time to fall in love with the relationship. Here, we've got to sort of like cook that in really fast, and I think that was accomplished with that wedding footage. It revealed so much about the heart of that relationship, so that I had a reason to be, cheering for this, to be a success, because I'm in love with that couple that I see at the beginning and can, relate to and identify people I know that are in similar situations, later in life. And yeah, we've got to have a reason. Otherwise it's, we've got other couples that will fall apart. So, you could have gone dark with that of 30 nights of sex and your marriage falls apart, or, again, go the traditional route of, how are we going to get them back together, and why, and who are they, and what do they need to get back in touch with, and why do we as an audience want to go on that journey with them? And I think I didn't think of it as a non-linearity, gimmick. It was, this is how we get to know our characters quickly and efficiently.
That makes me feel, that insight and your thought makes me feel great, because that's exactly what it was supposed, because we were presenting you as it starts with a broken couple.
Yes.
And we learned after writing that, starting of like, wait, no one's seen the short.
Yeah.
Like, no one cares. Like, I was like, well, everyone's going to be rooting for him because it's Johnny and Mandy.
Well, yes.
And then people are like, wait,
who's Johnny and Mandy?
Who's Johnny and who's Mandy?
Are only 7 people
so
going
like,
to see this movie?
I know. Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, you guys know it's not really being released on Amazon. This is just for you guys. Well, this is the next reel just
TNR production
release just premiere.
Lifetime
This is a part of our Patreon. Give us money. We made you an entire film.
Just say it's much more expensive than we expected.
Yeah, weird, right?
That was my first comment when the first time I saw the movie was, man, this is a downer early. Like, I already feel like my relationship is falling apart, and it's only been 5 minutes. I need to go hug my wife. Like, and so I think that to Steve's point, I think that's really well architected to actually, and the tie back to the, we have a place for the stains, and we have a place for the, I mean, it sets the stage for so much that happens later. The callbacks are earned.
And Pete, you actually saw an early version, a very early version of the movie. The one that you originally saw, we went much deeper and darker and sadder right away. We had a whole sad montage that I had cut to Sia's Breathe Me from the what's that show on HBO about the family that lives in the funeral home?
Oh, 6 Feet Under.
6 Feet Under. Yeah,
it's the famous 6 Feet Under finale song, "Breathe Me" by Sia, and I filmed this whole silent sequence and stuff. And I was like, "See," because my whole thought was, remember that sad part that Judd Apatow does? I did it in the first 15 minutes. So now we can just have fun. And all original reviewers of not reviewers, but people that we went to feedback were like,
heart sick.
Pump the brakes. Third act in the first act, Sally. We don't even know these people. I barely remember that his name is Nick. What are you doing with the sad walk of the soul montage? So all of that got cut. So no, I do remember, especially what you saw, Pete, where you were like, "Oh, well, this is the most depressed comedy I've ever seen."
That was absolutely true. I was, but after I medicated and came back to it, I felt like I was able to finish the movie, and that got to another one of my comments, which I think falls in the same vein, which is one of the I'll say harder core sex nights that you moved to. It's not an end credits thing, but it's certainly it's
almost like an epilogue.
Night 28, which you moved. And the way it played in the early draft did not work for me. And I chuckled heartily at this one. I thought it worked. It worked. It was a joke that played with me. I don't know. People are going to see this and they're going to start making assumptions about Pete.
Yeah.
Whatever. I want to talk about how some of those, how it played, handling, moving around some of those jokes too.
We got we had a really good pool of people to go with feedback that each of us picked, I think, 4 to 5 people that we really trusted separately. And this is the 4 of us that we gave it out to and then asked. And then we said, I came up with some sort of system. I don't remember exactly what it was, but if it gets 1 mention, you put it in this pile. If it gets, I think, 2 mentions, then it has to be considered. We really have to take it seriously because people, I've gone to living here in Los Angeles. I've gone to tons of screenings when I first moved here and I was like, I didn't like her necklace. Of course, what a dumb note, to give a filmmaker, of course, she or he should overlook that because I was 9. But, and so when there was a little bit of a consensus by enough of our things, then that's the other big hurdle, of course. And it's the forever hurdle for every filmmaker is the idea of killing your babies. Is you think that you have this perfect thing and your natural reaction is to go, well, you just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Because we set it up 3 scenes ago. I was very big on get that out of your head. if 2 to 3 people out of this group of people had this concern, it is a concern. You know, if the entire class fails, look at the teacher.
Right.
Kind of a thing. And so I was very strong on, we don't have to take every note, but we have to really, really look at it. And that was your note that you gave us about night 28, which is a big night, audience, as you will see.
What you're telling me is that my note that I gave you is unoriginal, that clearly it was in the Pete just piled on with every other Yahoo we talked about.
What I'm saying is I have my Gmail set to like ignore your responses, but the fact that you just brought it up, I have an anti-Pete folder. But I mean, like you were one of my strongest people that really talked about that. And I think now where it is in the film gives it so much more of a punch, because we originally had kind of a soft comedy landing. And now, for better or for worse, it is what it is. I will say, and this is all setting up suspense for people. I really do hope that everyone listening does go and stream, watch, rent, buy, however it works on Amazon Prime. When this comes out, we'll be able to give you the link in this podcast. There was a chance, you know, you can have, I already, as a director personally, I don't want to sound pretentious, but I disagree with the possessory credit. The idea of saying a Tom W. Knight's the third film up top. I don't believe that directors necessarily need to do that. I think it's too much of a collaborative process. But then one of the things you can do instead is put it the first thing that you see at the end of the movie. And based on what night 28 happens, I didn't know if, just thinking again of my family, I didn't know if I wanted to go straight from what happens in night 28 to, it's me, everybody, the guy you grew up with and everything. So that's me being very proud of the film, but also a little gun shy about how hard it goes sometimes, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if any of that is fun because we're all talking about things people won't know about.
It's a good setup. People need to go watch the movie. I do want to talk a little bit more about credits, because that's something that we talk about a lot, is, you know, all of the guild credits and how you navigate that. And particularly because you had some names in this film that have, is impolitic to say, more significant representation than others?
Clout? No, absolutely not. No, that was a huge part of the process. We had great lawyers that we met through Liz Vukovic. And that was sort of an endless, that's always there in the pre-production process of navigating the idea. It's funny. I mean, because I would think that most listeners of this podcast would already know that, but the idea of a name coming up and saying and versus with is enormous. I mean, there's like the writers about just the tiny little differences of when your name comes up with in connection with all the other names, timing, if you have the word and or with, or now introducing, all of that stuff is so regimented. Yeah. And there were some the fights that happened between lawyers that luckily we were able to sort of say, you guys figure this out. Some that we had to sort of not go to the mat for. No one was ever like really difficult, but dealing with certain lawyers, what can they do? They're doing the best they can do for their client. And, you know, there were certain lawyers that were real bulldogs about it. And we just spent a long time going over their contracts. And we're so lucky that everyone in the film was able to be in the film and we were able to come up with a good situation.
Did you find that translated like in any way paralleled, like the lawyer fights? Like, did you have those sorts of, you know, interactions on set? Were they as haughty as their attorneys?
Oh, the actors? No, The actors were all amazing. I think that a lot of what happens with this back and forth between stuff, that I really think that a lot of actors and actresses have no idea that it's that they've put their stake in the ground. And especially we were so low budget that even, you know, for someone like Dan Fogler, who's in all of these new Harry Potter movies, The Fantastical Beasts and Where to Find Them, he's on Walking Dead right now. Understandably, his representation was like, are you like jerks? No, I shouldn't say that. They were never rude to us, but they were understandably very protective.
Well, I think when you were shooting this was like Fantastic Beasts territory, right? Like, didn't he just
Right
go
around
from, what was the
one film to the 5 film commitment?
It was like, well, also like he did the ping pong movie, Balls of Fire, and like, I mean, he like those.
Oh, Balls of Fury. That was a while ago.
That was a long time ago. Like those are that's kind of where he was, and then you and then
catch skyrocketed.
Him. Yeah.
Just when we kind of caught him, and his people were very rightfully so, like, okay, like you're clearly a kid's table, and we're going to be very protective of him. And they were fair. And at the end of the day, it was a lot of work, but at the end of the day, I think everyone got what they wanted, which was fantastic. And Dan was amazing.
How did you get Dan and Alan and Jenny O'Hara? How'd you lock those people? I would like to say that they liked the script. I mean, we had a casting director. Her name was Miriam Hoffman. And between her and Mandy and Johnny, especially Johnny Giacalone, who have been actors for a long time in the business, they know different people and how to get to different people. And we were sometimes able to sort of circumvent past trying to just sort of throw a script on Dan Fogler's pile. We would never be seen or heard from again. But due to Johnny and Miriam and these different people, we were able to just sort of get through. And then they really responded to the material, which was great. And then we had we would meet with them. And luckily they were like, he seems like an adult. So I was like, great. I wore pants, which was very exciting. I left my big lollipop at home for once, and I really wanted it. My propeller hat. But no, I mean, in Hollywood, I would say we really lucked out. I mean, Katie Wilder, Lyric Lewis, who had just gotten off Mad TV and was about to be on AP Bio. I mean, all these people were blowing up or had been blowing up, and it seemed like they just found time for us. And it was like, they seemed to really respond to the Chris Butler, who's in The Good Wife. He actually had been an actor with Johnny Giacalone in something else. So he was so amazing to come and work with us. It was sort of, I had so little to do with, I take no credit for the casting except for not completely pooping my pants when I met them and convincing them, I have a vision for this. Here are my thoughts about your character. We can make this happen. You'll be in good hands. And then luckily we were also really able to do that. Did Chris Butler pick out his own underwear?
No, that was spoiler. No, that was definitely given to him, but he was fine with it. He was super game. Speaking of being super game, there is a moment in the film when legendary actress Jenny O'Hara in the script smokes from a joint. She shares a joint with someone during a party. Yeah. And I went up to her when she was in hair and makeup on the first day and was like, and just so you know, like, you don't really have permission to necessarily smoke in the house. And we're just going to have you sort of like hold it and stuff. You don't actually ever have to take a puff, just trying to be like really nice and stuff. And she gave me a face like, as if that's the reason she took this role. She was like, you don't want me to inhale? I know how to do these things. Thought that's what you wanted to see. And I was like, oh, like you want to do it? She's like, of course, it's in the script. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I was back on my heels trying to take care of her. I was like, I'm so sorry. Of course, we'll clear it. Even if we don't clear it, it's in. Let's do this. And then she did it like take after take. You can see it in the movie. She takes it like a champ, and it's great. I was trying to protect her, and instead she was like, get out of my way, idiot. I'm Jenny O'Hara.
That's amazing. Well, Tommy, I gotta say, I'm just so proud of you, man. I'm just so thrilled that it's up and it's out, and it's just it's delightful to have it not be a secret anymore.
Well, right. And of course, the big question now is like, what is next?
Yeah. What is next? 32 more nights. No, we don't have any.
No. You got to do the Danny Boyle thing.
Isn't the 80s
right, it's
anymore.
Not 30 nights. It's 30 months of sex.
30 months.
30 months. Yeah. It's just one night. It's a 1 2-hour long night filmed in real time. It's not going to be
Lars von Trier.
But we do have a movie by minute podcast ready.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So we can dog mill it. Perfect. We have been starting to write more things. I mean, we've been pretty consumed with this for a while, being such a small, there's never been a team that we can just say, well, we did this, now give it over, because we're so indie and so grassroots. We're the team. I was there for like about 7 months straight in post-production every day with them. I mean, so was Mandy, so was Johnny. So, but I have an idea actually that I've had for a zillion years, a story that I came up with actually with TNR podcast host, JJ, Justin Yeager. Something that we've been kicking around for a long time that I wrote as a short, never made, that I think would make an excellent feature. And it's actually kind of like a horror thriller kind of a thing. So much more maybe in my genre. And so we're hoping to maybe use, and then Johnny has some ideas. We're all sort of writing some separate things. So hopefully we can all work together on something again.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Thrilled for you, buddy. Glad to be able to see this and get it. Get more people in front of it.
And just to remind everybody, they can check it out right now over at Amazon Prime.
It's 100% available on Amazon.Prime. We are so Amazon.Prime. Look, I'm working it out. Internet, not my strong point. But we're so excited. Yes, we were picked up by Samuel Golden Films. We're already actually in 8 other countries. We're in South Korea, Germany, Taiwan, China, some other places in Australia, New Zealand. I think we're even available like on DVD, which I have no idea about. This is all happening with our sales agents and with Samuel Goldwyn Films and with Shoreline Entertainment. But no, for here, for Canada and the United States, and very soon for the UK, we are up on Amazon Prime right now. If you search for 30 Nights of Sex to Save Your Marriage, you can find us. And I really love this podcast so much, and I love the listenership. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for doing this episode with me, and for all the listeners, thank you for your support. And if you do watch the film, which I hope you do, I really hope you enjoy it.
Tommy, what would it take for me to get the Chinese cut of this film? Because I saw Logan in China, and that was not even a film.
Was it crazy?
I can't imagine what made it out of this movie.
Did I
China.
say China? I don't think we're in China, but we're in a bunch of places. But we're in touch with the people that did the dubbing in Germany.
That's awesome.
The female Willa reached out to us on Instagram and was like, I just did you for 2 weeks or something. We're like, hi, it's fun. No, we're in, I probably should have looked it up, but no, we're in 8 or 9 different countries.
So you haven't had to do different nights for different countries? Because I know Andy knows the complexities of international stuff. Well, you didn't have to like, hey, we need a different night 22 for
not
Russia.
A different night, but we had to definitely have a clean cut. So there's a cut of the movie where there's no subtitles at all. Like we had to give them in part of our deliverables, which was deliverables. Deliverables was such a nightmare. But yeah, deliverables, we had to like present them out of our own pocket, an entire version of like all the scenes that had text with no text, all of the scenes with, because there's so much text in the movie on purpose, like all the texting and like there's, you have to give a clean version so they can do all of them.
Right.
Luckily they have to do them.
Oh, super fun.
Oh,
we don't have to, but we have to pay for like a clean version.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's right.
Well,
I was
thanks
proud,
for keeping a
was proud of that part of we wanted to try to keep it kind of like timely in that's how like couples talk is it's not just sitting down around a couch facing the exact same way like in Big Bang Theory. There's so much virtual communication, which is fun.
This movie, it took me a long time to get out of my head in it, but I'm telling you that turn at the end in the third act was it just hit me just right. Just right. So I hope other people get the just right.
The just right?
Yeah.
I think it
has the Pete right, just right.
Right.
Spelled WRIGHT.
Don't do that.
Sign of approval.
Nobody thinks that's funny. I've lived with it all my life. You guys you're a damn riot. Okay.
We love you, Tom. We're thrilled to check this out.
We love you, Tommy.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for the time. Thank you for this special episode. And thank you, TNR listeners. I really appreciate your support.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you on the main show. I don't know, whenever it comes out after this one.
That's right.
Bye, everybody.
Hondo.
Did you finally climax together or separately like usual?
I want to climax.